When CD Projekt Red chose Project Orion as the code name for Cyberpunk 2, most people assumed it was just an arbitrary name pulled from thin air. But for fans of Cyberpunk, the name carried a fascinating implication. There's already an Orion in the Cyberpunk universe, and it's not just some random street gang or tech startup. It's one of the most elite, secretive, and morally complicated corporations in the lore. A company that specializes in extractions, rescues, and the kind of corporate black ops that make even Arasaka look restrained. Could this be a coincidence? Maybe, but given Pondsmith's recent hints about a new city that feels like Chicago gone wrong, and his ongoing involvement with the sequel's development, it's worth exploring how the Orion Corporation could become central to Cyberpunk 2's narrative. And once you start connecting the dots, a pretty compelling picture emerges. So what actually is the Orion Corporation? Well, in Cyberpunk 2020 tabletop game, Orion isn't a household name like Arasaka or Militech. It operates in the shadows, handling the jobs that major corporations won't publicly admit they need done. Founded by a man named Orion Hunter after he successfully rescued a corporate director from a street gang called the Ironsights, the company has grown into a 25,000 strong organization with offices across America and connections worldwide. So what does Orion do? Well, on paper, they're in the hostage release and corporation extraction business. If your executive gets kidnapped by a gang, Orion swoops in with the state-of-the-art weapons, trauma teams, and carefully planned rescue operations. They promise to have your back within 72 hours, delivered anywhere in the world. Low threat rescues from gangs or slavers start at €20,000. High level corporate extraction, stealing a rival company's top scientist or engineer, can cost between 1.5 to €2 million. But here's where it gets interesting. Orion also specializes in corporate kidnapping. They're as bold as a company could be while still technically operating within legal boundaries. Why would corporations use a third-party service when they have their own Black Ops teams? Because deniability matters. Arasaka won't take outside clients, and no major corporation wants to publicly admit they're in the extraction business. When you need plausible deniability and total secrecy, you call Orion. The company maintains a worldwide database of freelance operatives who live in the shadows, work through multiple layers of cutouts, and stay completely invisible. Many of these operators undergo full biosculpting after every single mission to change their appearance entirely. The most elite extractions are handled by people you'll never see or speak to directly. You'll pay them in gold or non-traceable assets through their fixer's fixer, and they won't leave a footprint behind. In other words, Orion is exactly the kind of morally grey organization that would fit perfectly into Cyberpunk's world of corporate warfare, disposable lives, and power struggles played out in the shadows. So what about this new city, the Chicago gone wrong? Well, the connection here is to do with Mike Pondsmith's recent comments at Digital Dragons 2025. When asked about his involvement with Cyberpunk 2, he mentioned visiting CDPR offices and talking with environment designers about the new place in Orion. He specifically said there's another city beyond Night City and it feels like Chicago gone wrong. This is where things get fascinating. Pondsmith didn't say the game takes place in the future Chicago, he said it has a feel of Chicago in dystopian form. But why Chicago specifically? What makes Chicago different from Night City's LA-inspired aesthetic or the Blade Runner vibes of classic Cyberpunk? Well, Chicago has a very particular character. It's a city built on industry, transportation, and commerce, a hub where goods and people move through on their way to somewhere else. It's known for its brutal winters, blue-collar work ethic, and a history of organized crime and political corruption that runs so deep it's become part of the city's identity. If you were designing a cyberpunk city that felt like Chicago gone wrong, you'd probably emphasize corporate logistics, transport infrastructure, brutal weather that keeps people indoors, and underground networks of smugglers and fixers moving contraband through the city. And who exactly would thrive in that environment? Well, a corporation like Orion, which specializes in moving people and assets without being detected, would naturally gravitate toward a major transportation hub where they could blend into the legitimate flow of commerce while conducting their shadowy operations. So how exactly could Orion shape the narrative? So let's speculate on how the Orion Corporation could factor in to Cyberpunk 2's story. We know from the job listings that multiplayer is being built from the ground up, and we know from Pondsmith that there's a new city alongside Night City. We also know Cyberpunk 2077 had multiple endings, which makes bringing back V a little complicated. What if Cyberpunk 2 centers around the Orion Corporation and its network of operatives? What if you play as an elite extraction extraction specialist, a solo working for Orion, operating between Night City and this new Chicago-inspired location. This would solve several narrative problems at once. First, it gives you clear reason to travel between cities. Extraction missions naturally involve infiltration, planning, high-stakes combat, and moral choices about who deserves to be rescued and who's just a corporate pawn. Second, it creates natural opportunities for both single-player narrative content and multiplayer co-op missions. Extractions often require teams working in coordination, which would justify having other players join your operations. Third, and most importantly, it puts you right in the middle of the corporate warfare that defines the Cyberpunk universe. Orion doesn't just rescue kidnap executive, they steal talent from rival corporations. They operate in the grey zone between legal and illegal, public and covert. Working for them means navigating impossible moral choices. Do you extract a scientist who's being held against his will, or is he actually being protected from the corporation that wants to weaponize his research? Do you rescue a corporate director's daughter from gang captivity knowing her father is responsible for poisoning an entire neighborhood? These are the kind of stories Cyberpunk 2077 told best, and centering Cyberpunk 2 around an extraction corporation would give the writers endless opportunities for that kind of morally complex storytelling. Also, the multiplayer angle here from the job listings make it clear that multiplayer isn't an afterthought this time. It's being built into the foundation of the game, but how do you add multiplayer to a narrative-driven RPG without it feeling tacked on? Well, extraction missions are the perfect answer. In the tabletop lore, Orion's most elite operations require specialized teams. You might need a netrunner to disable security systems, a solo to handle combat, and a tech specialist to bypass physical barriers, and even a medic to keep everyone else alive. These roles map perfectly onto multiplayer gameplay where each player brings different skills to the operation. This type of structured co-op gameplay would feel natural within the Cyberpunk universe while giving players meaningful choices about how to approach each situation. And because extractions are time-sensitive operations with high stakes, it creates the kind of tension and excitement that makes multiplayer compelling. Also, with Johnny Silverhand, as Keanu Reeves did say that he wants to return as Johnny, and Pondsmith claims he's worked out a way to make it make sense narratively, how do you bring back a character who, depending on your ending in Cyberpunk 2077, might be dead, merged with V, or living in V's body? Well, the answer might lie in Orion's capabilities. What if someone wants Johnny Silverhand extracted? Not the engram, the actual consciousness, the legend, the idea of Johnny that exists across multiple versions of events. What if your job as an Orion operative is to extract Johnny from wherever he ended up, and that becomes the inciting incident that draws you into the larger conspiracy? This would explain how Johnny can return regardless of Cyberpunk 2077's ending, why you'd need an elite extraction specialist as a protagonist, and how the story could explore themes of identity and consciousness that were central to the first game. It would also create a natural connection between the two games without requiring players to have a specific ending from Cyberpunk 2077. Now, given Mike Pondsmith's consultative involvement with this game, his enthusiasm about the new city and his story direction, and the specific capabilities that the Orion Corporation brings to the table, it's hard to believe that this is just a random choice of codename. The codename might be the biggest hint we have about the game's narrative focus. If Cyberpunk 2 centers around the Orion Corporation, it would give the game a clear identity distinct from Cyberpunk 2077 while staying true to the universe's themes. V was a mercenary trying to survive and find meaning in a world that treats people as disposable. An Orion operative is someone who specializes in making people disappear and reappear. A different kind of story about control, choice, and the price of operating in the shadows. Now, we won't know for certain until CDPR is ready to talk about Cyberpunk 2, which won't happen for years, but the pieces are all there. A codename that matches a secretive extraction corporation from the tabletop lore, a new city that feels like a transportation and industrial hub, multiplayer functionality that would work perfectly for team-based extraction missions, and Mike Pondsmith's enthusiastic involvement in shaping the story. Whether Orion turns out to be as central to the game, or just a clever codename, the corporation represents something compelling, a way to tell morally complex stories about power, control, and survival in a world where your life is just another commodity to be extracted, traded, or discarded. And in the Cyberpunk universe, that's exactly the kind of story worth telling. I've also got a ton of other Cyberpunk 2 updates, which I'll leave in the description pin comment section below. We're also, of course, talking about CDPR's Witcher, as there are tons of Witcher games coming from Witcher 4, 5, and 6, the MMO game, and even the Witcher 1 remake. And guys, it is finally here. The Balboa Club Witch Hunt Collection Volume 1 is now available and will run from December through February, and this drop is specifically inspired inspired by The Witcher, as I wanted to blend the styles of the wrestling world with the games we all know and love. But please go ahead and check out the Balboa Club store. It's on the channel store page, and the website is in the description and pinned comment section below.
Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement.